Hello, this is Cleo Franklin. I'm very excited today to have a good friend and a colleague on my podcast today. He is Dr. Marcus Bernard. Dr. Bernard is a game changer, the epitome of leading by example. And do not let his soft-spoken voice, his humility, which is very powerful, fool you. He moves in silence, but he's very, very powerful in transitioning and, of course, in impacting those that engage with him. He's a chair of agriculture at Kentucky State University. He also is professor of agricultural economics and rural sociology. He has a bevy of accomplishments. He's also the president of MANRRS, that's Minorities in Agriculture and Related Sciences, and of course, Natural Resources. MANRRS is an organization that provides a platform for young minorities of color to come in, to have access to career opportunities, professional development, internships, externships, you name it, any opportunity that's going to give you access to prepare you today to be a future leader is what MANRRS is all about. And Dr. Marcus Bernard is going to talk about that today. You're also going to hear about one of the things that I feel is important, and that's the power of networks. He's going to talk about the importance of building relationships and how relationships can open doors, close doors, or make smaller doors bigger. Anyway, sit back, relax, grab yourself a cup of coffee or a cup of tea, as Dr. Bernard and I are going to chop it up and give you some real straight talk. Good afternoon, everybody. I want to welcome you to another episode of Conversations with Cleo, and you're in for a delight. You're going to meet a colleague of mine that I'm a big fan of, not just of what he does, but when you hear about how he places his purpose in action, I think you're going to want to get to know him and also become a fan just like I am. He is Dr. Marcus Bernard. Dr. Bernard is the past president of MANRRS, and that is Minorities in Agriculture, Natural Resources, and Related Science Organization. He's also the chair of the Agriculture Communities and Environment at Kentucky State University. He's an associate professor of agriculture and economics and rural sociology at Kentucky State University, and he's a research lead fellow. There's a lot more that I can say. There's a litany of things that I could talk about the accomplishments of Dr. Bernard, but I'm going to call him Marcus because he's my good friend, Brother Marcus. And Brother Marcus, why don't you say hello to everyone here?
Good evening, everyone. Thank you, Brother Franklin, for inviting me to your podcast today. And as you shared, it's been a joy and definitely a learning experience ever since our paths have crossed. The one thing I would say you may have left out is I'm just an old country boy from North Carolina. I grew up what I consider a really good childhood on a small farm in southeastern North Carolina. Gave me some values around good work ethic and really the importance of people and treating people right. I had some interactions in my educational journey that helped propel me to where I'm at today. And the biggest one, which I'd never thought about it, is it's not how smart you are. It's not all the genius innovation that you bring to the table. It's how hard you're willing to work to go after whatever it is that you want. Anybody can have what they want if they're willing to work for it. And that's what got me into MANRRS. That's what got me through my educational degrees. That's got me to where I'm at today. And I'm thankful for the mentors that taught me that. MANRRS, as national president this past year, had the opportunity to meet some amazing people in the world of agriculture. And the narrative that so many young people have about agriculture just being about plows, cows, and sows. Mm-hmm. It is about those things, right, but it's about so much more.
That's correct.
And as I told my family, as long as people have to eat, there'll always be a job or an opportunity for me in my future while I'm in the workforce. And so manners taught me some leadership lessons that I think are priceless. One, um, that saying that your network is your net worth.
I love that. I love that saying,
Something
by the
to
way,
that.
Brother Marcus. I love that saying. Go
Yeah,
ahead.
there really is something to that. And the second thing I learned along that way from an ambassador, I heard at a speech he was
Hmm.
giving, is that people hate change but love progress. And if you're going to be an effective leader,
Hmm.
if you're going to be a leader that contributes something to an organization, to a community, or to a cause,
Yes.
change is often a part of that equation. And people may not like it while they're going through it, but they will
Right.
love it most of the time when you get along down the road. So learned so many lessons, and thankful for the opportunity to be with you today on this program.
Well, I just want everyone to understand why I'm a big fan of yours. As you can see, one of the biggest traits that I feel is important for any leader, that is the to understand the power of humility. I mean, you have just exhibited humility and represented it in all of its essence throughout all of your accomplishments and the things that you have done. And we're going to chop it up. We're going to get into a whole lot of things. And as you've talked about your roots from North Carolina, and by the way, my great great grandfather, after the Civil War, of course, traveled from Newborn, North Carolina to Casco, Arkansas, over in Keaton Township. There's some connections there with North Carolina. You said something that I think is important, and I want to use a Latin phrase. It says, "Palma non sive povere," which means no reward without effort. And those are some of the things that you've talked about. So let's talk about the rewards that you have basically been able to amass, and as you still are in your career, as well as be an inspiration for others. So I would like to know and share with the audience what is pretty much 1 to 2 focus objectives of manners when you're bringing in and preparing students to have a career in agriculture.
Sure. Two things in manners for me. The first being the idea of coaching and mentoring. When we start to really mentoring and coaching and working with students, we get into the minutia and really help students to transform
Mhm.
themselves into a new person, new product. And we tell them it was always there, but like anything, sometimes you just need a little coaching and mentoring to help you become your best self. And manners is that's one of the biggest and best things about manners, and that makes a difference. So seeing these students transform their lives through mentoring and coaching is the first. That to me is very significant. And then two, connecting the dots that agriculture touches everything
That's
for
correct.
students is mind blowing. I would tell my students, and taking this into a middle or high school sometimes causes a frenzy. But I'll get two crisp $100 bills, $200, and I'll say to the students, if you can tell me anything that is not connected to agriculture, food, or natural resources, this is yours. And to this day, no students have been able to name anything. And they eventually get, hey, that's a trick question, Dr. Bernard. Everything's connected to agriculture.
Right.
And, and so then it goes into just the many different ways these connections are happening, and to see the light bulbs just turn on. It is personal motivation and inspiration for me to be able to connect to students, because without a future workforce, without these students taking an interest, and I'm not necessarily saying that they're going to become farmers, but to get engaged in the industry in some way, the future would look pretty dim.
Yes, it
And
would.
yeah, so those are two things for me that really stand out with MANRRS. And I'll just throw a third one in there because it goes back to you and I, and that's the networking.
Yes.
I would not have met or engaged with many of the leaders in agriculture or across the food and agricultural arena without MANRRS that I've come in contact with. And these are decision makers. These are people that can directly impact or change, or as they say, move the needle forward in educational programs as well as in communities. And to bring them in the classroom to students or have them at the national conference, I mean, I don't think the students sometimes realize the
Right.
privilege and opportunity that's before them, because these are not people that you just bump into on the street and they're going to open up and talk to you, and they come to MANRRS and they want to. I mean, they are paying to be in that space to share their journey and what their organization provides as a service or a good. So those three things: networking, coaching, and mentoring, and the connection to students who are the future of agriculture.
Dr. Bernard, you just gave a very salient point, and specifically, I would like to just more or less point out the fact and how you speak about agriculture. You mentioned food. And food is so important, not only where it's sourced, who's sourcing it, how it's being produced, educating everyone on food. It connects us all, whether we're from suburbia America, urban America, or rural America. Food is the sustenance that we all can connect to. And I think often sometimes when we speak about agriculture, which is a very broad global industry I've been involved in, you're involved in, when you speak about it in terms of food, it connects us. And that's food, fiber, fuel, infrastructure. Of course, agriculture supports so many different industries. But I want to ask you a question, and you made a very good point about the things that MANRRS is involved in, as well as what you're doing as a professor at Kentucky State University. I see Kentucky State University and MANRRS as a gateway of access and opportunity that will help propel those who are looking to pursue their dreams a step forward to pursue that. It's important that I think the difference between those that do and those that don't is based on an accumulation of the access of experiences and opportunity. But the key word is access. And without access, you will not get an opportunity to get a chance to experience. And experiences is who we are. We're made up is just, again, an accumulation and aggregation of all the experiences that we've had. Based on your experience and as an educator and someone who's involved across many different boards and leading organizations, what would you provide for students who are listening today, or parents that are seeking an opportunity to place their students in a position to be successful like yourself?
Relationships matter. Relationships will be the thing, in addition to hard work. I mean, you have to show up, be present, and work hard. But you also have to learn how to build relationships, good relationships. And with any relationship, while we're talking about this in a professional context, but I liken it into personal relationships and friendships. Good friends are people that show up for one another. It's not a one-sided friendship or relationship. It's not only the interest of one being served. It's a two-way street. And I see that in the corporate and professional world also, that is not a one-way street. It's a give and take where you're looking to build and work towards something larger than both of you. So relationships.
Relationships matter. I agree. As they say, no one's successful alone. And if you want to go fast, go alone. But if you want to go far, go together. And I agree, 1+1 is more than 2. And to be able to cultivate, to develop those relationships that are mutually beneficial, especially if there's a core shared vision, mission, and goals, I think is important. And that's a good lesson, which I now want to just pivot to, again, as a fellow professor. And I do believe that teaching is important, but preparation in preparing those for the real world. I want to get into a little bit more of this real talk.
Yeah.
As you know, when I share with my students, we'll go through concepts, we'll go through constructs and theories. But I also like to share with them, based on my experience, these are the things that are not taught in the textbook that I like to give to you that you will need today and tomorrow in the real world. Is there one thing that you can share beyond the fact of relationships for a student or for a parent who is trying to help their student make a decision, their child make a decision, that is a real talk gem?
I ask my students the simplest of questions. And I tell them, it's not to treat you like a kindergartner, and they get it, but really talking to students in this generation and having them talk back is so important, because I've had students that will nod their head. They might even take a few notes and tell me, "Oh, Dr. Bernard, I understand. I have mastered this material." And I'll say, "Well, tell me how you mastered it." "I read it twice." "Really?" I said, "So you committed it to memory after reading it twice?" And we start to get down into the weeds. And so I'm quick to tell students, you're going to find out the things that you don't like and don't want first.
That's
you know,
correct.
Sometimes, you might be that rare gem that finds something and you love it. But in that learning process, you're going to find out some things that don't work for you. And that's okay. And so talking to the students and to parents of their children, sometimes in the simplest of ways, cannot be overstated. It's so important, so that they understand that where their children are and where the students are.
Well, one more question for you and a comment. I do agree that it's not just to know about a subject or a craft, but to take command of that craft. Once you have command, you can explain something very difficult simply. And that's the takeaway that I received from you as you try to educate and give your students that particular tip as they move forward in their lives. Last question for you, Dr. Bernard.
Yes, sir.
And that question is this. If someone is interested in pursuing a PhD to be in your position, of course, to be a department head, what is one or two things that you would share with that individual or president of an organization? Because they're out there and they're listening. What would that be?
First, I would say do your homework. Do your homework on the master's degree or PhD program. Time is the one thing that you will be required to put into any educational program. There are no shortcuts. You can't buy your way out of it. You will have to commit the time. So do your homework. Make sure you can commit that time. Second, I would say is back to work ethic. Work hard. And third, I would say for going into a leadership position or doctoral program is pray. Uh,
I
I
love
should
that.
have said that first.
Well, you know what? We're saying it now. Go ahead.
Yeah, we're saying that, whatever your faith or belief system is, you will get connected to it in a way that maybe you have not prior to taking on that leadership role or getting into a doctoral program. And so be ready to be pushed beyond the limits of what you may think are normal. You absolutely can do it.
Right.
Please know that you can do it, but be ready to be stretched, be ready to grow, be ready to work hard. When I turned 28 years old, I went skydiving.
Mm-hmm.
My father, I was in 82nd Airborne, and I'm afraid of heights. I don't even ride the roller coasters when I go to an amusement park.
Right.
But I said, other people have done this. It's not a new thing.
Right.
So I can do it too.
Right. So why not me?
So why not me? And so if you're thinking about a leadership position or you're thinking about a PhD, why not you? Do what it takes and you will be successful. Absolutely. No doubt about it.
Fantastic. Well, listen, Brother Marcus, Dr. Marcus Bernard, everyone, I hope that you enjoy this conversation. And how would people be able to get in contact with you at MANRRS? What is the website address?
Sure. It's MANRRS, www.manrrs.org is the MANRRS website. You can also find me at Kentucky State University. Simply my email address is Marcus, MARCUS, Bernard, BERNARD, at kysu.edu. I'd love to hear from you.
Well, listen, folks, as we say, you do the hard things, but the first thing to do is to have something that gives you a, I guess, path forward. And here's a person that is a true example and living example of a path forward. By the way, I want to give a shout out to Dr. Janine Fields, who introduced us both. And thank you so much. And I'll leave with a Latin phrase that's acta non verba, which means actions, not words, because you are purpose in action. Thank you, Dr. Bernard. We'll talk soon. God bless.
Thank you, Brother Franklin. I appreciate the opportunity.
Storytelling is one of the oldest platforms across the world. It's the best way to learn. It's the best way to remember things. But I think it's the best way to communicate who we are, what we do, why we do, and what's in it for you if you're a listener. And lastly, good stories are not only heard, but the best stories are told and retold and shared. So I hope you enjoy my podcast and my guest, and I look forward to you having conversations with Cleo, but also giving your feedback. If there's somebody that you're interested in that you'd like for me to host, let me know. Hey, thank you, all the best, and may God bless. This is Cleophas Franklin. If you want to keep the conversation going with Conversations with Cleo and hear more wonderful stories about ordinary people doing extraordinary things, then go to coffeewithcleo.com. That's coffeewithcleo.com to purchase any of my books. Again, these stories are built around the people that I'm bringing to you on my podcast from around the globe. But also, every purchase of my book goes to scholarships for underserved and financially challenged students who are pursuing a college education. So your purchase will help them turn their dreams into reality. Again, that's coffeewithcleo.com. Thanks so much. All the best, and I wish you good.